Emmanuel Sanders, new to the team, coming over. He finished as wide receiver 43 last year, 61 receptions, 82 targets, 726 in the yards, 5 touchdowns. Had a 16% target share down there in New Orleans last year. Guys, your thoughts on Manny Sanders coming to the Bills?
It's a sneaky play. I liked Manny Sanders when he was in Denver, obviously, that veteran leadership that he provided. Then when he went to San Francisco, I was like, I kind of like him there as well. And then when he went to New Orleans, I was like, yeah, it just makes sense. It's a guy who can find himself open. So it's a sneaky play. I think wide receiver 43 is probably, that's about right where I would have him. It's a sneaky play, and it could pay dividends if you get on a week where there's a good matchup.
I think Emmanuel Sanders is going to be a very nice security blanket for Josh Allen as teams continue to slide more coverage over to Diggs and try and limit their ability to just feed him the ball again 9, 10, 11 times a game. Emmanuel Sanders is very, very good at creating space and coming down with the football in tight windows when he has to. He's good for the locker room. He brings a passion and a fire about him that the team can rally around. He has no problem going over the middle. He will sacrifice his body to come down with that. And he, with them not having a real tight end option and having a wide receiver like Emmanuel Sanders willing to go across the middle and kind of occupy that territory of the field, he's going to have a couple games where he's going to see elevated protection because teams are just going to be so dead set on doubling Diggs all game long. They don't trust no one's scared of the running attack. I like Emmanuel Sanders. I think that ranking, again, is probably about right. Like, I could see him finish anywhere from 30 to 50. And we're talking, when it's all said and done with, we're probably talking about the grand scheme of 35 points as far as fantasy goes, spread out over 17 weeks. But I like Manny Sanders, but yeah, he's my wide receiver 4 or 5 on my team. He's a guy that, yeah, this looks right. He's a safe play.
Yeah, I mean, the only things that I need to add to this, because everything's been said, is he's consistent at what he does. He does all the little things right. And a team like Buffalo that is that far away from, going over the hump and being a championship team, they need a player in the locker room that is the opposite of Cole Beasley right now. And, he does all the things right. And the other thing I want to add is the Saints would really like to have him back right now.
Emmanuel Sanders, I think at this point in his career, is much better for actual NFL football than he is necessarily for fantasy football. And I say that from looking at, just last year when he was doing that, I see a similar production like Kevin said as well. And I see that coming in similar kind of fashion to it. Whereas last year, if you played him, there was 2 weeks that you would have been happy to have him in your starting roster. One was in week 5 where he finished as the wide receiver number 11. The other one was in week 17, which for most fantasy players, you're not playing in that because that typically came the week after championship weeks. The rest of the weeks, he was wide receiver 3 or worse when it came to fantasy, right? Like outside of those 2 weeks, his next top finish was wide receiver 25, had a couple of like 27s, 30s, some of those types of things. So it was one of those that if you were putting him in as a flex option for your roster, there were probably other options that would have suited you better to do. And where he's being drafted at right now is coming off the board and like wide receiver 80, like it's buried on ADP. He's a guy that will go undrafted in a lot of fantasy rounds. And that's kind of where I'm going to leave him, is kind of in that undrafted realm and be looking for him maybe on the waiver wire, things like that, as we start to see how his role is going to be in this Buffalo Bills offense.